Okay, let's dive in. Have you ever been in one of those sales meetings, maybe feeling like you're just going through the motions, or perhaps wondering what's really going on behind the scenes to, boost sales?
Oh, yeah. It's a pretty common thing in business, isn't it? That constant pressure to improve sales figures and find strategies that actually work.
Right.
And understanding how those discussions happen, how ideas get tossed around and decided on, well, that's valuable stuff, even if you're not directly in sales yourself.
Totally agree. So for this deep dive, we've got something pretty interesting. It's a transcript from an English learning podcast on YouTube.
Okay.
Now, hold on. It's not just about learning vocabulary. This particular source used a simulated sales meeting. The original goal was teaching intermediate English learners about sales strategies, making suggestions, that kind of thing.
I see. So it gives us a kind of simulated real-world look at how these things can play out. A sales problem, different ideas being thrown out, the reactions.
Exactly. It's like a snapshot of business communication in action. So our mission today is basically to pull out the key business insights from this script.
Okay.
We're looking at the actual sales strategies they discussed, the communication dynamics, how people interacted, and some useful business English terms that popped up.
So kind of a focused look at sales talk and team interactions.
Yeah, think of it like that. A way to quickly grasp some core ideas. And, you might even find yourself nodding along, recognizing some of these scenarios.
All right, sounds good. So where does it start? What was the big problem they were trying to solve in this meeting?
Well, it kicks off with the manager setting a pretty urgent tone. Basically says, and this is a quote, "We've got to do something about our sales, and we need to do it now."
Okay, no ambiguity there. Pressure's on.
Definitely. And they're not looking for vague ideas. The manager demands concrete solutions. That's a key phrase they use, meaning, practical, specific things they can actually do.
Right, concrete solutions. That definitely sets a certain mood. High pressure, results-oriented, very familiar in a lot of business settings when numbers aren't looking great.
Exactly. It really shapes how the rest of the conversation unfolds, how people propose things and react.
So let's get into those proposals. What were the actual ideas put forward to try and drive sales, and how did the manager take them?
Okay, so the first one came from a guy named Roger. He points out what he sees is the issue. They're the most expensive in the market.
The classic pricing problem, or perceived problem anyway.
Right. So his solution is pretty straightforward. Lower the prices, match the competitors.
Makes sense on the surface. And the manager's reaction, let me guess, not thrilled.
Not even close. Dismissed it straight away, called it not very creative, and then adds that it'll never fly with Swan. Swan being the CEO, presumably.
Ouch. So, shut down on creativity and feasibility with the boss.
Yeah, and then there was this little kicker. What kind of thinking is that? Geez. Pretty blunt.
Wow, okay. So that tells you a bit about the manager's style, maybe, and also highlights that phrase, match the competitors.
Yeah, what does that really mean in this context?
Well, generally it means trying to be as good as or better than your rivals, often on price, like Roger suggested. But, just slashing prices isn't always simple. You have to think about your costs, your brand. Are you able to match them? Should you?
Good point. Being cheapest isn't always the best strategy long term.
Exactly. So, okay, Roger's price cut idea is dead in the water. What was next?
Next up was Natalie. She suggested a promotion, maybe a 2-for-1 offer or something like that.
Okay, another common tactic, a BOGO offer or similar.
Yep. And the manager's initial reaction to this one, still pretty negative. Said it was the same thing as lowering prices, basically. Called it a bad idea.
Huh, interesting.
Even doubled down with really bad idea. This manager seems pretty hard to please initially.
It seems that way. And it's interesting because promotion covers a lot, right? It's not just price cuts. It could be bundles, loyalty, things, ways to maybe attract different customers or boost volume without just slashing the sticker price. So Natalie's suggestion, while standard, gets dismissed too, makes you wonder why the manager was so resistant to these, fairly standard approaches. Maybe worried about profit margins, brand image.
Could be. The transcript doesn't explicitly say, but the resistance is clear. Okay, so the first couple of ideas don't really land, but then the whole vibe changes, doesn't it? Someone important shows up.
Right, this is where it gets really interesting. Mr. Swan, the CEO, arrives, and the manager's whole attitude does a complete 180.
Yeah, the transcript even notes the repetition, like, hello, Mr. Swan, oh, Mr. Swan, hello, Mr. Swan. You can almost picture the scene, can't you? The sudden shift in posture.
Definitely paints a picture of, office hierarchy in action. And then what happens? The CEO asks for ideas.
Yep. Swan asks what they're thinking. And suddenly, the manager brings up Natalie's idea, the 2-for-1 offer, but frames it differently. Says it was something they were kind of considering to get more competitive.
Whoa. The same idea that was really bad just moments ago.
The very same. And it's all about how it's presented now, isn't it? Because the CEO actually likes it. Swan says something like, H, I kind of like the sound of that. It sounds like something we should consider.
Ah, the magic words. Something we should consider.
Exactly. And boom, the manager's tune changes completely. Suddenly, Natalie's idea isn't just, okay, it's brilliant. It's very creative.
Wow.
And the manager even tries to claim credit, saying, I'm glad we thought of that.
That is quite the turnaround. It really shows how much influence the boss's opinion can have, right?
Right.
An idea's merit suddenly seems less important than who likes it.
Totally. And it brings up a couple of those phrases the original source highlighted. In the market, and it'll never fly.
Right. In the market, like Rod just said, they were the most expensive in the market. It just means in the industry, basically. Knowing where you stand compared to competitors.
It's crucial, isn't it? Not just price, but features, quality, how people see your brand.
Yeah.
Everything that puts you in the market.
Absolutely. And then it'll never fly. The manager used that dismiss Rogers idea, remember? It'll never fly with Swan.
Meaning it won't work, or more likely here, it won't get approved by the CEO.
Exactly. It's a common idiom for an idea that's doomed from the start. For whatever reason, too expensive, impractical, or just not something the higher-ups will go for. Understanding that kind of shorthand is pretty important in business conversations.
Yeah, it's about reading the room, understanding the unwritten rules sometimes.
Precisely.
The original source also had this section called Fluency Builder, focusing on more natural-sounding English. Any interesting bits there?
Yeah, a couple of good ones. One was about saying the CEO will be here any minute. How that sounds more natural and immediate than just, I'll be here soon, or I will arrive soon.
Right, it conveys that sense of urgency, like, really soon.
Mm-hmm. Another point was the slight difference between thinking about something and considering it.
Yeah, Mr. Swan said the promotion idea sounded like something they should consider.
Right. And the point was that consider sounds a bit more formal, a bit more deliberate than just thinking about it. A subtle nuance, but it can change the tone.
Makes sense, like you're giving it more serious thought.
Yeah. And finally, they mentioned the word brilliant. How it's often used, maybe more in British English, but understood widely, as a stronger way to say great idea, more emphatic.
Like when the manager suddenly called Natalie's idea brilliant after the CEO liked it. Adds that extra layer of enthusiasm, maybe slightly over the top enthusiasm in that case.
Potentially, yes. It just shows how even small word choices can convey different levels of approval or feeling.
It's amazing how much you can unpack from just a short interaction like this, isn't it? Really makes you think about different management styles and how teams work together.
Oh, definitely. And the original hosts apparently discussed that too. Their take on the manager wasn't exactly glowing, was it?
No, they found the manager pretty dismissive, maybe a bit intimidating, and definitely quick to grab the credit when the CEO liked an idea. Not exactly a model of good leadership.
Doesn't sound like it. They contrasted that with what a good manager might do, right? Being encouraging, supportive.
Yeah, creating an atmosphere where people actually want to share ideas, even risky ones, because they feel supported, and how that leads to better motivation, loyalty, better results, ultimately.
That really hits home, I think. Most of us have probably seen both sides of that coin, haven't we? How a manager's approach can either shut people down or bring out their best.
For sure. That feeling of psychological safety, I think they call it. Being able to speak up without fearing you'll get shot down immediately, like Roger and Natalie initially were.
Exactly. That's so crucial for any team that needs to solve problems or innovate. And this manager's behavior, at least initially, was kind of the opposite of fostering that safety.
Okay, so before we wrap this up, maybe a quick run through of some of the key terms and ideas we touched on.
Good idea. So we had concrete solutions, practical answers. Drive sales just means increase sales. In the market, meaning in the industry. Match the competitors, being comparable, often on price.
Then it'll never fly, meaning it won't work or be approved. Promotion, like the 2-for-1 offer. Be here any minute for immediacy. To consider versus just thinking about.
Right. Brilliant as strong approval. being competitive in the market, the goal to win sales, the overall sales strategy, and things like the sales cycle, trying to outsell rivals and building customer loyalty.
It's a good set of terms that really capture the essence of that sales discussion.
And knowing not just the dictionary definition, but how they're used in context, like we saw here, that adds another layer.
Definitely. So thinking about you, our listener, what are the big takeaways from this deep dive into, a simulated sales meeting?
Well, I think there are a few key things. First, just seeing different sales strategies in play, price changes, promotions, and realizing there are always pros and cons, and context matters. Second, the importance of knowing your place in the market, how you stack up against competitors, and whether you can or should try to match them.
And the communication aspect too, right?
Absolutely. How ideas get presented, how they're received, that can be just as important as the idea itself. We saw how an initially rejected idea suddenly became brilliant just because the CEO showed interest. That says a lot about power dynamics.
And finally, that point about leadership style. How a manager acts can really impact whether people feel comfortable sharing their ideas, which is, pretty fundamental for any team's success.
Yeah, a huge factor.
So here's a thought to leave you with. Thinking back on this meeting scenario, have you ever been in a situation where an idea got shot down at first, but then later, maybe under different circumstances or with different people involved, it got picked up?
Or maybe flip it around. If you were in that meeting, facing that initial resistance from the manager, how might you have tried to pitch your idea differently to get it considered, even before the CEO arrived?
Yeah. It really makes you think about that mix of strategy, how you communicate, and the leadership environment, doesn't it? And how all those pieces fit together in the workplace.
Definitely food for thought. If this sparked your interest, you could always dig deeper into different sales approaches, or maybe look into communication techniques for business, or even explore different leadership models and how they affect teams. There's always more to learn.